Right. Look, hi everybody. This is our buddies here at the Heretic Clerics. We don't have BA, and when we don't have BA, we do more of a free-form show. I'm here with Sir Chad and the Apoplectic Atheist, and we have a couple of topics we've just kind of thought of off the top of our heads before the show. And I'm going to leave it up to our newest cleric to see what he wants to start with this week.
Good evening, everybody. Chad Paquette here from Denver, Colorado. And there's a couple things that came to mind through a multitude of news feeds and whatnot, as well as the Rational Thinkers group that I've got on Facebook. First and foremost, I want to address something because I've had some really good feedback from a lot of the members in the group, of which they brought up a point in that there's a lot of different stages that we all kind of come to when announcing our disbelief. And with that said, we really have to be cognizant that the people who, we often, marginalize because they believe in something different than we do, oftentimes without evidence, is that they're still human beings, and we need to treat them with respect. A lot of us came from religious backgrounds, and with that said, I don't think that any one of us would acknowledge that we're any more intelligent now than we were prior to coming out as atheist or whatnot. But just the process is that we just use a different means of thinking, in that we're a little bit more critical. We kind of question more. And so I'd really be interested in getting both, Buck and Double A's input on this one. So guys, you want to chime in real quick on that?
Yeah, I think. I totally agree with you. There's a line that can be crossed as far as being too aggressive. I feel like you got to pick your battles, and there's different ways to approach every situation. You got to be definitely have to be understanding and basically an adult about it, and you know what I mean. It just takes some. I don't know, just some empathy and some maturity to approach these situations. And I think you'll be all right. What do you think, Buck?
Well, in an office environment, the discomfort can go both ways. Certainly, seeing crosses and other religious paraphernalia can create an atmosphere where atheists feel less welcome. But if your counter to that is to challenge their religious beliefs, I think that's as much as it is sort of a positive thing from a macro perspective, in that office environment is probably creating more of a hindrance for them than it would be going the other way for you just to see their paraphernalia. So you have to approach it as more of an interpersonal sort of issue than as taking it to the streets kind of issue. I've mentioned to various people over the years who, in interpersonal settings about being atheist, and you get a variety of responses, and you just don't know how someone will react to that, and you don't want a bad situation to happen. So, it's about using good judgment, trying to befriend people first, being social about it. I think that's what I would think about that, Chad.
You bring up some very interesting points and some good food for thought there, Buck. I really like that approach. Is kind of like you said, befriending people. I think it's imperative that we try to find common ground with these people prior to engaging them in any sort of combative fashion, and just starting right off with questioning why they believe what they believe, getting to know them as a person, find out. Do they like sports? What do they like to do when they're not working? Just do they have how big is their family? Where are they from? Just some common ground to establish some rapport with them and take more of a human approach initially. I think that's really proven a lot more effective for me because I know that I've tried the more acerbic, a little rub people the wrong way maybe out of the gate by going right into the heart of the matter and asking kind of why they believe in certain things. But I think if you can approach it a little bit more delicately, i.e., kid gloves, we're going to have a lot more success in this. And I think, and we talked briefly about, what are we doing to kind of like promote rational thinking? Well, I think that's a great segue in that if somebody's, wearing a cross or a T-shirt that says "I love Jesus," it's a great opportunity to start a discussion. Matt, your thoughts?
I have a couple things. One is going to get off topic a little, but I'll stay on topic for the first part. I like to let the way I live be my biggest. I don't know, my biggest argument. Basically, I don't really go out looking for to actively debate people in my personal life. I don't hide who and what I do and don't believe in. So like I just kind of lay it out there and let people see like, oh, this is what an atheist looks like. And if anybody wants to come and ask me questions, then that's great. I want to say, what was I going to say? So yeah, that's my tactic. If somebody's wearing a cross or something, I don't look for ways to kind of wiggle my way in there to talk about that. I'd say the most I would do is to promote rational thinking is I would find other reasons to bring up rational topics that don't have to do with religion and get them thinking rationally about other things, and hopefully they'll realize that the same thing can apply to religion. Because in a work, especially in a workplace environment or personal environment, there's going to be many opportunities for things like that to come up, where you can, give those little tidbits that aren't related to religion, and but it kind of carries over. Like say somebody gets an oil change or something, and you could say, hey, I saw this show where these oil change guys are ripping people off. They say they changed your oil, but they really didn't. How do you know they really changed your oil? Can we check? Can we look at your oil? You know what I mean? That's just, I never have done that, but you know what I mean? There's the more you think about it, there's plenty of scenarios where you can promote rational thinking. It doesn't have to be based on religion. That's the thing that's on topic. And then I want to say that on the far end of the spectrum of the militant atheists, there's the I don't know what it's called, but I guess like militant religious person that's wearing the cross and has the Jesus fish and is always talking about religion. It seems like they almost think that you not wearing a cross is a sign of the devil or a sign of atheism. They take the absence of, now correct me if I'm wrong, but they take the absence of you talking about God or wearing crosses as atheism. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I think that's part of the way that they justify their persecution complex as well. But sorry to interrupt you. Go on, Buck.
Oh no, I just thought you were doing. So my thought is on that. If you're not wearing any crosses, they probably think you're of a different religion. Generally speaking, that's what I've found in those people. It is pretty rare to find that far end person in the workplace, in my area anyways. Perhaps there are other jobs or parts of the country where it's more common. And so it seems to me that you have to, again, treat them better than they treat you. If they're just because they are more aggressive on their side, it doesn't mean that give you the carte blanche to throw that right back at them. And so, it's the same sort of.
Do you think that really happens a lot though in a workplace environment?
No, I don't think anywhere really happens all that often.
No, I don't think
Certainly,
so either. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring it up in that aspect. I just wanted to bring up an example of a far end of the other side. That I don't know, whatever.
yeah, and we've met people over the years. Certainly when you interact with people who are, clerics, you can expect to see more of that far end of things. Like I remember, talking with a monk about his religion, talking with a nun about her religion. It's when you get to that end of the scale, you're not going to sit down, yell at someone, and convince them of your position. Um, but there's the Tea Party types who just are going on almost nothing, not even a traditional religious perspective, just on propaganda
Those
for
are
the
the type
most
of
part.
people that are basically sending and not receiving. Is that
Yeah,
what you're getting as well?
yeah, no, absolutely. I just so just to regard people as the amount of religiosity that they are sending out or receiving or portraying in their life is, I think, a bit oversimplified in that sense as well.
My my question to you both, and if I may interject real quick, what do you guys do to plant seeds with these people? Because you're not going to instantly approach somebody wearing a cross and just instantly try to like break down why they believe what they believe. But there's got to be something to stimulate a little bit of a conversation to kind of, like Matt hinted at earlier, getting them to think rationally, right? And so with that said, like bringing up things such as, hey, did you find out, that there's now flowing water on Mars, and that could mean there's life on there. What does that all mean? Just getting them kind of thinking in perspective. And the biggest thing for me, guys, is kind of attacking faith, but not negatively attacking it, but just kind of questioning things. So accepting things without evidence is the thing that I have the biggest problem with. Is that people that want to believe in demon-infested pigs and talking donkeys and guys that live to be 969 years old and floating zoos and just the ridiculous things that they have to, the mental gymnastics required of them to believe what they believe, and just kind of putting it in a context so that maybe you're not necessarily attacking their religion, but just pointing out something in another religion that they could perhaps relate back to their own. Matt, you want to take it?
Yeah, I think the major problem with going after faith is that religious people don't know the definition of faith. All they know is that it's good and that's what God wants of them. And if you ask them to define it, I think they would have a very hard time. And I agree that that's what you want to do in a street epistemology type scenario. You would like to back them in that corner and get them to realize that faith is, you know what I mean, basically not having any evidence. But to get somebody to realize and put two and two together as far as that goes is really hard. I mean, I think that's like the end goal basically. And apparently I'm a little choppy. There's nothing I can do. Yeah, so I mean that's how I feel about it. Actually, I got something I can do. So somebody else take over.
Yeah, certainly there's nothing more frustrating to people in our position than hearing people say, "Oh, I just do," or "I just believe," or "That's just the way it is," and without having to explain anything. They just are too entrenched in their position to have their thoughts even examined. And when you get to that point, it's very hard to progress the conversation. Sometimes you can't progress the conversation from that point. And I think that the it helps to understand where that perspective comes from. Um, People, is often pointed out in our atheist circles, that people are of a religion based on their families teaching them their religion, and that is based on often the community where that family comes from. And so there's a lot of geography
Isn't that
involved.
fascinating? Oh, sorry.
Hmm? Oh yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
that
yeah.
fascinating to basically just discover that that they have read a part of one book or probably very little of the Bible, so to speak, if we're referring to Christians, um, that they're going to subscribe wholeheartedly to that without even taking a really investigative look at it. To me, it's just a little bit absurd in that how do they know unequivocally that theirs is the one true religion? And
I don't think they see it that way. I think I of it from a sociological perspective, where people of a insular culture have a hard time understanding that there is a life and a rationality outside of their own. And so these people are so entrenched in the idea of God and church and the way that things are that the idea that there can be a rational mindset or even the mindset of another religion just doesn't gel with them because they don't know how to, say, think outside of that box.
Well, they
Uh,
think they are rational. I would think they would feel that way, personally.
well,
well, for all
rational
practical
has many
purposes,
meanings. Oh,
they
go ahead.
are rational in pretty much every other aspect of their life. But it's just the one thing, believing in, that Jesus was born of a virgin, walked on water, and all this
Yeah.
other stuff that basically has zero evidence to support it. They're going to believe it because they have a feeling. And so, my question to you guys is, what have you discovered? I hate to paint it with a broad, brushstroke, but we all, at some point, probably experienced some sort of something. And with that said, we held firmly to our beliefs, but there was something that broke through to us. It's what are we doing ultimately to plant seeds of doubt to get them at least to question things or like to really read their Bible?
Well, I think to plant the seeds um, is to expose people to outside sources. I know that just in general, I like to inject things like humor and things like, I really like talking about science. I even like really talking about statistics. um, and so things like that will naturally uh, lead to the point where you're having this more rational discussion, from my point of view.
So help me understand. You said you like to talk about science and statistics. What about statistics? Would somebody find interesting or intriguing that would ultimately lead them to kind of come back to their own beliefs?
Well, I just was talking to someone this week who said that their evidence of God at that moment was that someone that they knew had fallen from a high distance and not been hurt too badly. And so when I see that, I say, okay, this happens at this frequency, and just there's more. A lot of times where that person dies, a lot of person where they're more injured. There's sometimes where they're injured the amount that person was injured. There's times where they'll be injured even less. And to take the statistical point of view on that, where you can tell someone, hey, why don't you, you know, you're it's very personally based, the way that you are seeing this outcome.
One of the biggest things I think, guys, that we can do to really help progress people's rational thinking is to basically attack the book, the Bible, and basically prove the points in there that are demonstrably false, i.e., the world is not 6,000 years old, it wasn't formed in 6 days, and there's no such thing as rib women and dirt men. So, with that said, to get them from a theistic mindset to a deistic mindset, it's okay if they want to believe in a God because they can't basically they can't acknowledge or admit to themselves that because they don't have the answer, that they by default use the God of the gaps argument, which we've all heard a million times, right? So I think it's a big win for us if we can basically just point out some of the inconsistencies, innumerable inconsistencies in their quote-unquote good book, and get them to read some verses that God commands some really horrible things. And for every light, airy verse that they can see in Romans or 1 Corinthians, I mean, there's 100 in that same book that are just horrible, commanded by their God. So would you guys agree that getting the mindset to shift from that theistic mindset to a deistic, like, hey, I believe there's something bigger than us, but I don't know if, I believe everything in the Bible, if that's a good start?
Well, one thing I'm going to say is, I think it was brought up in the book that that's a slippery pig. Like, they're just going to come up with an excuse of how that was a metaphor, or how Jesus changed it, and he came to preach love, and it's a new covenant, and there's 1,000 different outs for them in that. That's why I'll go back to my method of using real-life scenarios outside of the Bible. The other thing is, when you attack the Bible, it feels like such a personal affront to these people that they just kind of close down. From my experience, I'm saying there's like 100 different ways to go about it, but I'm just trying to give you my experience. And I feel like, yes, any movement in the secular direction or atheist direction is a win, but yeah, that's why. But I also feel like anything we do is a win, is a movement in the right direction. You don't have to go out there and be a warrior for atheism. I don't feel like. I mean, yeah, it's great if you can do that. It's great if you're good at it. If you're not good at it, you could be hurting the cause. And I just feel like people should meet them wherever they're able to. Like we do the show, we do other shows. I have the stickers on my car, and I started a local group. That's stuff I can do, but I'm not going to put myself in an uncomfortable situation and potentially make it worse. You know what I'm saying? That's just my take on the whole thing.
So my question to you guys is what are you doing to kind of be active with regard to promoting it? Because there's a multitude of ways that we can go about, kind of promoting people to really think. I don't need people to think like me, but rather just simply to think. So with that said, there's certain things that are really near and dear to my heart. With that said, women's health is number one. Like, I don't know about you guys, I love women. So any chance I get, free time, I'll go down to the local Planned Parenthood where there's people that are protesting down there, and I'll make it a point to kind of be a counterbalance, if you will, for those people out there screaming over the fence, they're killing babies in there, and just kind of get them the right information. And so that realizing that they're promoting a bunch of nonsense basically, and that it's ultimately hate. The people that are at Planned Parenthood are there for women's health issues, i.e. birth control, so they don't get pregnant in the first place. They're there for other procedures. So you guys have any sentiment on that?
Certainly, women's health is a very major issue these days.
I think we talked about this last time, didn't we?
I don't know. I don't remember last week very well. But the whole Planned Parenthood government shutdown debate is still big news, even though it's been somewhat solved. And so this whole, Republicans hating of women basis, based on just chauvinistic, propaganda-based traditional nonsense, is really terrible for our society. Oh yeah, last show was me hosting on abortion. I guess that it does really, doesn't it? Anyways, so yeah, take a look at that for more information. So yeah, when trying to make people think in a more rational way, you have to just judge your audience. It's about having just basic social interactions, I think. And
That's
go
a
ahead.
great that's a great segue into kind of like you guys wanted to talk a little bit about the whole Trump motion and whatnot. You know, a couple verses that stick out to me in the Bible. People who you've heard, I'm sure, a multitude of Republicans say that Obama is like the Antichrist, right? And so with that said, Hebrews 13:17 says, have God is basically speaking on the people. It says, have confidence in your leaders and submit to their authority. Romans 13 verses 1 through 7, basically all of you must obey all of those that rule over you. And so those are two pretty strongly worded things directly coming from God, saying that the people that He's chosen, these people that are in our government in positions of leadership, and we should respect them. They're divinely appointed. So don't you think that cherry picking a lot on their behalf just because their candidate didn't win per se, that their God is the one who said He basically picked these people to be in office?
Absolutely. And it's just another one of those circumstances where the Bible contradicts itself. Because you could find other parts where they talk about the Antichrist, where he's going to become this leader of men, and so the very concept of the Antichrist goes against those passages where you have to respect your leaders. So it's a really undereducated point of view on their part. Just trying to find a way to contextualize events in their lives with the only context they know of, a biblical context. So from that, it's kind of easy to see why they would go that route, even though that route is nonsense. We've lost Chad. Hopefully we'll get him back soon. Anyways, delay.
I feel like it just goes back to the same thing over and over again. They can find 100 excuses for everything in there, and it's just so slippery. You know what I mean? They could say, "Oh, well, that was then. God was talking to the people then, not us now." They could say 100 different things, and then combine that with that people, first of all, don't study the Bible, probably don't even know that these passages are in there. Second of all, they think how it is now is the way it's always been. So, and then they're also part of their tight-knit groups where they're being told that Obama's the Antichrist. I don't know if you guys saw that meme, Antichrist. If you haven't looked it up, but anyways, Obama's the Antichrist, and they're just being reinforced by everyone around them. It's just ignorance. I mean, how do you combat that? It's not easy. I mean, they're just, especially ignorant people are going to just get upset and lash out. Is usually what I find. So it's tough. What do you guys got?
That brings us to the point with regard to confirmation bias, because we all fall victim to it. It's not just the believers, even us quote unquote atheists and non-believers, agnostics, etc. We all fall victim to the confirmation bias, and so really empowering them and getting them to think critically about their own beliefs. Why would just have you found any success in kind of questioning? So I understand that you believe that every word in the Bible is true, or sometimes they want to just cherry pick. Well, the Old Testament, they want to marginalize, say, oh, that's just analogy for what how we should live our lives. But I don't know. Any thoughts on how to address the cherry picking and really get them to take a more objective look at their book?
Real quick, I'll say my personal experience. I don't know if it's because I'm in the Northeast, but I don't run into real hardcore Bible thumpers that even know anything about the Bible, really. It's always this like new agey kind of, maybe they call themselves Christian or non-denominational or whatever. That's all I've really encountered. So I haven't run into a dead-on scenario like that. What do you have, Buck?
I tend to find that but the people I find are also not generally that religious, although the people I was working for when I lived in Cape Cod were really heavily religious. And it's just difficult for people to work outside of what they know, and the whole idea of there's a lot of people who just say la 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 la, I can't hear you. I'm just Bible good. I'm not gonna read it, and shit like that. So it's there's a lot of cognitive dissonance, a lot of undereducation, and all of that.
So, oh, Chad, your mic's not on. You can go ahead if you want.
You brought up a great point with regard to the medical field. That's something that definitely grinds my gears, and I'm sure that many of you guys encounter the facepalm inducing situations where people are thanking their imaginary friend for the work that doctors and trained medical professionals have done. So that's another thing that I'm pretty passionate about, because there's a lot of people out there that don't go to 8 years or more of medical school to have their hard work be instantly dismissed, in lieu of some imaginary entity that had nothing to do with it. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly it's very disheartening to see when that happens. People who don't attribute it to God often have as little understanding as those who do in that context. But certainly it's unfortunate in that end. Certainly when I think of debates on religion in the medical field, I think of it from the perspective that a lot of doctors out there are very religious people, and they're going pretty much
Do you think
against.
so? Do you really think they are?
I
Why?
I have a lot of experience with doctors, if, only because I have a lot of family that are doctors, and then they bring over people, so I have a lot of friends who are doctors. And there is a very large community of very religious doctors. I worked for 3 very religious doctors when I lived on Cape Cod. um, so it does happen a good deal, and their whole
Well,
they
I've
separate
read.
their work from their Bible, and they just are perfectly fine with the cognitive dissonance of having 2 worldviews, one for work and one for home. And you can't question doctors on anything, as they're usually just so freaking full of themselves. But if you can,
So that brings up an interesting point, because there was a meta-analysis. There's a meta-analysis done from 1912 to 2012, a 100-year study that researched over like tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of people, and basically there's an inverse relationship between religiosity and people's education. So with that said, you would think it would be a logical deduction that the higher level of education someone has achieved, the less religious they're going to be, and that's what the data says. So that's why I kind of
yes,
question your assertion of doctors being predominantly religious. Where I think
right. I know about that, and I think you'll see that way more pronounced in academia than you'll see in medicine and law, because of the different reasons people get into these fields. A lot of religious people get their medical degrees to, help people in theory, and a lot of academia are just people who are interested in, the facts and the research on a certain subject. So I have no doubt that, academia in general is becoming more and more atheist, but I think medicine is an outlier in that.
Well, do you think that has something to do with perhaps its tunnel vision? They're focusing on a particular specialty, and therefore not delving into a larger conglomerate of studies.
Um, their first 4 years are sometimes 5, depending on the person, are not specialized in anything. It's just them learning the chemistry, the biology, the basics of medicine. And so, they all have, in theory, the ones who, are good at it and remember it, a solid background in, sort of sciences that would debunk their kind of biblical worldview. It just doesn't seem, in some cases, to really dissuade them.
I'd be interested in seeing a statistic on that, as with respect to the medical field. Certain professions, whether it's if you want to deem a chiropractor as a doctor, or like cardiologist, or somebody who's a neurologist, somebody who's laboratory technician. I'd venture to guess that those people who are well educated in the field of biology, they would instantly have to at least be somewhat agnostic in that what they're taught and what's drilled into their head, they see it on so many different levels, as far as microevolution, right? And so
Yeah.
it's got to be a natural deduction. So
I'd like to chime in in a second.
Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
Real quick, just let's remember to mute our mics. So I want to say that you're equating educated people with the medical field. Yes, doctors are more highly educated, but I think when you encompass all the other highly educated people, for example, I'm kind of leading into something here. A lot of hospitals are religiously owned, and a lot of medical schools are religious schools. I'm not saying that they're bad schools because of that. They're probably good schools. And I feel like the medical field attracts those type of people who want to feel like they're doing God's work, and it just fits for their mindset and the way they live their life. I want to say that there's not very many religious astrophysical colleges or religious observatories or religious engineering firms, or you know what I'm saying? Like, so when you take all of the educated people, maybe more of the educated religious happen to be in the medical field instead of engineering or science or astrophysics or whatnot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Just personally knowing a lot of doctors, they tend to be sort of, well, this is a very broad brush, and so I'm not going to make it very clear this isn't a generalization. But I run across a lot of idiot savants in the medical world, and they understand their Bible, they understand their biology, but they don't equate it. Quick Google search to Chad's point before says that 76% of doctors believe in God and 59% believe in some sort of afterlife. Just, a really quick look there online. And that the least religious specialty is psychiatrists, which makes a lot of sense to me because those are the people who actually, in the medical field, have to understand how to interact with other human beings, which not a big thing in the medical field. Just psychiatrists and Bernie. So that's it.
A bit of a self-defeating assumption, though, in that if they really believed in the power of prayer, they wouldn't have jobs. If God really did answer prayers, we would have no children under the age of 5 dying every 5 seconds. In this world, we wouldn't have people, horrible diseases. We'd have cures just through prayer. We'd have no need for doctors or trained medical professionals and or medicine, because prayer would heal them. So there has to be a strong level of cognitive dissonance in the doctors you've met, because I'm a little bit more of a progressive area of the country, I would say, then, in comparison to what you're experiencing, because a lot of the doctors that I've run across and met here and gotten to interact with at social events, a very few of them believe in a higher power. So it's interesting to hear that your experience there is vastly different.
Yeah, and certainly Cape Cod is a good bit more religious than the rest of Massachusetts. Um, I'm sure Matt can speak more effectively on
All
Cape Cod.
are the old conservative people around here.
Yeah, but certainly where I am now in Ohio, there is a good deal of that religious background as well. So yeah, I mean that geography could have something to do with it.
So you brought up an interesting point earlier in that a lot of the hospitals that are across the country do have some sort of religious name or somewhat of a religious affiliation, if you will. But I don't think by any means that necessarily has a correlation to the staff working there. I think as a whole, we need to look a little bit deeper, kind of follow the money, so to speak, because I know that from experience, religion likes to market themselves as really helping people, helping the masses, when in fact that they want to kind of a tie to the fame in that, they're not the ones. God's not coming up with cures for diseases or cancer and that kind of stuff. So your thoughts?
I think them being religiously owned totally does affect it. It affects it greatly. That's why these religious hospitals won't give abortions. That's why when they hire a doctor, the doctor's going to want to toe the line because he's getting paid good, and he's going to want to fit into that mold that they want. They want somebody who's not going to give abortions. That's going to, going to send in a priest when somebody's on their dying bed and going to pray right before every surgery and whatnot. I think Buck had something.
Uh, a good story that I've heard from various family members who went through med school is that when you go on rotations in your third and fourth year medical school, they send you around a whole bunch of area hospitals, and some of them are religious hospitals. And so at the beginning of this rotation, my brother, who, we're a nominally Jewish but really just non-religious family, goes to his rotation at this Catholic hospital, and they say, okay, everyone who's new to this rotation, come on over to the chapel. We have to anoint you with oil before you can start. And so, a bunch of, a lot of atheist, Jewish, whatever, medical students, uh, along with, I'm sure, plenty of believing Christians, just statistically, are walking over to that place, and they're like, all right, do your stupid oil thing. And they're like, all right, here you go, splash. All right, can we work now? Sure. So, the whole idea of people who are going there thinking they're getting some sort of care based on a religious practice really only goes to the end that Matt was talking about with the abortions. I mean, that's really the only main difference, that and sort of palliative end-of-life care between them and the other hospitals.
So you brought up an interesting point with regard to, like the Jewish person you just mentioned, or Jewish people. That's more of a heritage thing to me than it is a subscription to a particular religion. Because I know that it'd be like saying someone who is Arab is instantly a Muslim or whatnot, where Jewish is more of a heritage to me than it is, subscribing to that particular dogma or doctrine. So,
You've come to the right person for that. That's kind of one of my areas I talk about a good deal. So, what we call Jewish in this country is really Ashkenazi, um, which is the Jewish diaspora of Eastern Europe. And that has been termed to be culturally Jewish in this country as just sort of a shorthand because there are many more of the Ashkenazi culture than there are of the Sephardic Jewish culture, the Ethiopian Jewish culture, etc. And so I think the terms get a bit conflated when you talk about it on that end. That said, a lot of people do abide by those terms, and yeah, a lot of people are just what they refer to as culturally Jewish, where they take the heritage of those Eastern European peoples and just have their basically, being Ashkenazis like being Italian or something like that. It's any of the traditions or foods or whatever you get from that. And so that's what we're calling Jewish, and that's kind of what people are mostly getting from it these days.
Got it.
I didn't listen to anything you just said, but that's okay.
That's not shocking in any way, seeing how we've talked about it a bunch on our shows.
Yeah, I've heard it.
But yeah, that's another show. But as far as doctors go, and there certainly have been a lot of Jewish hospitals throughout the years, and certainly up in New York, and I think Boston has one.
I got something to bring up while we're on hospitals. I haven't been to the hospital a lot, but the last time I went, I had to go to the emergency room, and they ask you your religion when you check in. Isn't that kind of messed up?
It's more to see if you actually care about it, and to have the right sort of priest come in if you need
I guess
one.
you're right, but I don't know. Just kind of. Yeah.
Well, I just found an interesting statistic here, guys. It says 20% of the hospitals in the United States have religious affiliation, and 70% of them are Roman Catholic. 4 of the largest healthcare systems are Catholic-controlled, including the largest Catholic health initiatives in Denver, which operates 78 hospitals. So it's kind of interesting that I live in a city that apparently is one of the largest initiatives here for kind of religiously affiliated hospitals, but yet I don't really see that being that prolific here.
So what I was wondering when you mentioned that earlier, are the doctors you hang out with? How are you meeting with them? Is it in a, what I mean?
I mean, through business, through like I'm out in the field a lot with my job, and so I'll just strike up dialogues with people and then inquire if somebody comes into my place of work and they're wearing clearly what looks like scrubs or doctor's uniform. I'll ask them or something like that, just to kind of pick their brains and figure out what they do and see if they find a lot of enjoyment in what they do. And I ultimately like to maybe inquire as to whether or not where they stand on the religious scale, so to speak, and if they really think that prayer heals people and that kind of stuff. So,
dude, just be honest. You're trying to figure out if they're a hair doctor because you're trying to get hair plugs. All right?
No, I'm cool. I like it like this.
I know. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I was gonna do another joke and say you were trying to hit on them because they were a hot chick, but I thought that one would play better. But all right.
Not too many hot chick doctors in my experience, but some do exist.
Maybe a good segue point to shifting gears, and maybe discussing the irony in sports. So, just recently, Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers, he's a quarterback there. He kind of made a mockery of Russell Wilson, the quarterback for Seattle, who they beat last week, handily, I might add. And Aaron Rodgers, his post-game conference, he basically was kind of mocking, saying, "Yeah, I'd like to really thank God for this," and kind of made it a point to like rub it in Russell Wilson's face, because Russell Wilson gives thanks and praise to God for everything. First and foremost, as soon as the camera hits him and the microphone's in his face, that's the first person he thanks is God, for this. And it completely negates all the training and blood, sweat, and tears he put into the hard work to get where he's gotten. And I think it's kind of fun when you see certain athletes, whether it be Aaron Rodgers or you guys probably heard of Arian Foster, who openly came out as an atheist. He's a running back for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, we've covered him on the show.
Okay. So forgive me if that's something I missed, but
I think Buck loves talking about sports, so you guys will hit it off again. Once again, I'll just stay here and pet my dog.
Don't you think it's ironic that that apparently God likes one side better than he does the other because they're both praying to the same God to win, you know? And so
Yeah,
the
yeah,
justification, the mental gymnastics that really need to take place after the game for somebody to justify, well, apparently I didn't pray hard enough, or God wanted me to learn a lesson. I mean, just that to me is profoundly idiotic, for lack of better words.
yeah. It certainly is. It just makes me think of my extremely conservative Catholic friend who's a diehard Packers fan, and I'm wondering what he's thinking about his quarterback right now. But yeah, it's incredibly stupid people's religious affiliation in sports, and we have a good religion and sports episode where I go, you know, really deep into the stupidity of that. But yeah, it's constantly brought up, and I think it's because it's media training, a lot of it, because you don't go, people in general don't come up to you and say like God this and God that. So it's like they're in front of a camera and they're trying to say something that they think is acceptable, and the only thing they know will always be acceptable is to invoke their God, because they know in their society that's the ultimate form of being a good person.
Great point. Do you guys want to talk briefly about Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think Buck does.
Well, I did have another thought from a previous point. The whole when you were bringing up that most of the religious hospitals are Catholic, despite our country not having a majority Catholic population amongst Christian groups. That is because of a lot of the separation that Catholics got in our country's early history. So think of the Irish need not apply, the Spanish and Hispanic populations having a lot of discrimination against them, and so it's part of that background that has caused there to be a lot more Catholic hospitals and a lot more Catholic schools than those of other denominations, because it was their way of sort of getting away from the mainstream Protestant institutions that were basically the state back in the early history of our country. So that's my thought on that. My thought on Trump is that he's a fucking retard. Go ahead.
Uh-oh. Well, you said a bad word.
I know I just did that for BA.
So you're not going to apologize now? You're going to do it later?
Never!
Yeah, I mean, so he's ahead in the Republican polls right now? Is that my understanding of this?
Yes, that is correct. I listen to
I mean,
NPR regularly, and they have even hour-long segments, basically detailing what he is all about to kind of give the base of us a little bit more insight as to what the guy really stands for. And it really sounds like he's kind of misogynistic first and foremost. If you've seen any of the Republican primary, like the debate stuff going on, he and Carly Fiona, the former VP of Hewlett Packard, have had some exchanges, and Ben Carson is still relevant and on the radar, but I think he's going to be on the decline here shortly because of some of the things that he said with regard to Islam, and that they should be deported because they're terrorists. So
I think our national Islamophobia is at a point where that's a positive.
yeah, I definitely haven't been watching those debates. I watched the parodies of them, and yeah, if Trump becomes president, man, I don't know. I can't.
Move to Canada.
Yeah, I
I
can't
think
even
that
fathom
it's
it.
kind of ironic that the term fat chance and slim chance mean the same thing, in that I think a lot of people are going to come to their senses. They're going to ultimately look at the actual facts. When confronted with facts, I really hope that Bernie Sanders has a chance to debate some of these guys, because I think he will utterly dismantle their arguments from the ground floor, and they won't have a foundation to stand upon, because, you know, capitalism isn't what is driving this country. It's ruining this country, and there's
Yeah,
such a
I
negative
agree.
stigma, not only associated with the word socialism, but obviously the word atheist as well. But tying into the whole socialist thing, if you take a look at the World Peace Index, and there's mass surveys done on this in the Scandinavian countries such as Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, France, etc., the typically more secular countries where there's a vastly disproportionate amount of non-believers in contrast to the United States living in those countries as here, yet the crime rates are much lower, the life expectancy is much higher, the overall income equality is better, the happiness levels are much higher amongst the citizens. They just live better lives, and so those are all in essence socialist countries, and so if we kind of follow their lead, they must be doing something right.
Absolutely. Certainly, there's a lot of factors that go into a lot of those social statistics, and certainly one that's often pointed out is that those are oftentimes more stable societies that don't really have the massive amount of different groups that we do. But there's also sort of a lot of terms being thrown out in there that kind of have their meanings dragged around a bit. The socialist system is still capitalist. It's capitalism in a way that is meant to benefit more people with social programs. But in all of those countries, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, are still countries where you make private business, you make a salary based on that, and it's works very similar to here. It's just a matter of caring about your fellow countrymen and trying to put together a relatively decent social structure for them.
So
And
why do you
hmm?
think it is, Buck, so many conservatives ignore facts, i.e., there's meta-analysis, huge studies that are done in these countries that basically demonstrably prove that what they're doing is working, and it's doing a lot better than the United States is as far as level of education attained, crime rates dramatically reduced. Um, why do you think our conservative base here in the United States is ignoring so many of these blatantly obvious facts?
Because they're getting a lot of public special interest money to get as much tax breaks for rich people as they can and line their own pockets.
I'd say anybody who's lower middle class and buys into the capitalist or Republican. Buck, can you mute your mic? I'm getting feedback. Buys into that is crazy. They just been sold. They've taken the wrong pill. They've been sold a bill of goods. Like they they think that all you have to do is work hard in this country and you will be rich. So if we take money away from rich people, when I get there and I'm rich, then they're going to be taking money away from me. And they believe in this bull crap about trickle down economics, and they've been lied to. Not everybody in the country can become rich at the same time. It just can't happen. They just don't realize that. And people think that they're the center of the universe, and they don't realize how their life isn't going to turn out the way they think it is. Really. What the heck was I going to say earlier? I don't know. Whatever. We're running out of time, so we should probably wrap it up.
On that cliffhanger, we want to let all of you out there know that you're the center of our universe, and from us at the Heretic Clerics, we have Sir Chad, who apparently is now using his full name, Matt, the Apoplectic Atheist, and me, Sir Julot, saying for all of us, have a good night, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in. Peace.